Hi, welcome to Contributions with me, Andrew Mosawi. My guest this week is Marina Glogovac. Marina is the president and CEO of Canada Helps. It's one of the largest providers of digital fundraising solutions for charities here in Canada. Marina's been president and CEO since 2013, and before that she had a very successful career in the for-profit world in the technology sector as a CMO for Kobo and then CEO for Lavalize. So looking forward, as always, to chatting with Marina about what she's seen over that time and what she thinks for the future of the sector. Marina, hi, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Andrew. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you. It's for once, it's a nice day here in Vancouver, and I think I'm going to try to find a way to enjoy it. How are you in Toronto? How is everything over there?
It's nice. It's nice here today as well. Pretty sunny. It's not that hot, but it's nice.
Good, good. Marina, thanks so much for joining Contributions. I really appreciate it. It's I know your schedule is hectic and busy, especially now, so I really appreciate it. You know, one thing I would love to sort of kick off is for you to talk a little bit about Canada Helps. And first of all, congratulations. I understand it's Canada Helps' 20th anniversary. So it would be great to hear a little bit about Canada Helps in your own words, if that's okay.
Right, for sure. Well, Canada Helps is a very unique, really technology organization and a public foundation that is dedicated to increasing giving in Canada through technology. And we primarily do this through two programs. One is a website where Canadians can come and donate to or engage with any registered charity in Canada, or set up a monthly payments or fundraise for, donate securities, bonds, stocks. And so that's a very, very popular, very trusted, very successful platform, kind of one-stop shop for all things giving in Canada. But also, I would say even more importantly, we build fundraising technology for smaller charities, much like Shopify, who we're often compared to. We build a platform so that smaller charities have digital technology that it's affordable, it's accessible, it's effective, and most importantly, they don't need to have a massive kind of in-house know-how in order to set it up. So it's very, very simple. So that's our kind of B2B line. And there we have almost 24,000 charities that are using us. We'll, of course, create a lots of education and webinars, because with increasing digital capacity is not just about technology or software. It's a lot about the know-how and the acquisition of that know-how and best practices. So we do all of that. And we have been around for 20 years, Andrew, and have grown very much every year in a high double digit. And especially this last year when we saw this tremendous acceleration toward all things digital.
Did I read somewhere that a third of Canada's online volume of donations comes through Canada Helps?
That's true.
Wow. And so you took over as the CEO in 2013. And before that, you had an incredibly successful career in tech, leading organizations in a few different sectors. Tell me a little bit about why did you make the move? What made you decide to move from the for-profit sector into the non-profit sector?
Right. Well, it wasn't, I was curious about the nonprofit sector. I think it's also fair to say, Andrew, that maybe I got a bit tired of VCs and startups and founders and, very, very intense. I went through a few very intense, fundraising constantly. And I also think that at that time, and following some personal circumstances, really wanted to reconnect with idealism of my youth. It's the best way I can put it. I just wanted to see if I can do, with my skills in management and leadership and technology, media, content, if I can do something that actually means more. But to be honest, I did not predict that I would stay this long. I thought I would go in, and this opportunity with Canada Helps emerged, and I thought it was such an amazing fit for me. But I thought I'd stay a year or two and do what I need to do. But we kept growing, we kept being busy. And to be honest, once you start doing something that is deeply meaningful, and it adds a whole different layer of engagement and in your life, it's really hard to go back. It's really hard to go back. I kept looking at other opportunities back in the for-profit, and I'm like, no, I don't really want to go into MarTech or EdTech or FinTech or selling things, when I have now met hundreds and hundreds of incredibly inspiring people who are leaders of charities in Canada, and I've got acquainted with, what they're trying to do, and it's really hard to walk away from that.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme with folks. And by the way, first of all, can I steal the going back to the idealism of youth? I'm going to use that myself, because it's a great and so powerful and so true. But it's a recurring theme with many of the people that I'm talking to on contributions, that they come into the sector either through just happenstance, through one single opportunity, but once they're in, they just find it very difficult to leave because of the people, because of the passion, the purpose of the sector, because it's infectious. And so, some of the people that I'm talking to, like yourself, you've been in 8, 9, 10 years. There are some folks. I spoke to a gentleman called Daryl Upsall a few weeks ago. He's been 35 years in the sector. As you say, once you're in, it's difficult to leave. So tell me a little bit about, you've seen a lot of change in that time. I mean, the last 8, 9 years in the sector, I mean, putting the last year aside, what are the big differences that you've seen, the big changes in the sector in terms of how it's evolved?
Well, it definitely has been evolving. The sector has been around for a long time. So in some ways, it's that old space that could become, a status quo. That I was a magazine publisher before I got into the tech proper. And so I understand those big industries. And the charitable sector is a very big part of Canadian economy. I mean, that's one thing that maybe so many people don't understand, that it's actually very consequential to the Canadian economy in terms of its contribution to the GDP and, the number of people that it employs. So I've seen really charities come around to the importance of digital. And of course, this is something I've been preaching forever and even before I got in here. But I've seen that charities have really embraced that more than ever. I think charities continue to underinvest in themselves, and that's more of a systemic issue that I think plagues the entire sector, that is particularly, pernicious right now. But I think that underinvestment, especially underinvestment into the digital capacity, is really what's also preventing charities from achieving greater impact. I'm very, very convinced of that. And some things have not changed, Andrew, that are a bit of a concern. The first one is that we've been seeing this through our own giving reports now for years, that most giving in Canada is still falling on the shoulders of Canadians aged 55 plus, right? And because they give twice the rate of younger Canadians. And, there is no indication that the giving of this younger population will be replaced when these older Canadians can no longer give. And so that kind of remains an issue, I think, for everyone, right? How to engage younger adults in Canada. And of course, that has a lot to do with technology and a few other things. One successful thing that we tried that I think could be successful is the creation of our cause funds, where we basically aggregated a whole bunch of charities into certain verticals. They're a little bit like mutual funds, so that a whole bunch of charities that are addressing the same space, the same cause, can be donated to through a single transaction. And that we did that because we read a lot of research and trends that basically say that younger adults are more interested in causes than individual charities necessarily. So I think this is the gap that we'll have to cross somehow, right? In terms of the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I saw those. That's such a great idea, because I think that there is over time, there seems to be that disintermediation with the generation that wants to have that impact, that they want to focus on a cause as opposed to an organization. And so what Canada Helps has done there is fascinating. Tell me, because I read you have a really great report, your giving report. For any viewers that haven't seen it, if you go to Canada Helps, there's a great giving report in it. You talk about how actually a worrying trend is that the number of Canadians that are giving is going down. So even though the percentage and the volume of digital and online fundraising is going up, the actual aggregate number of donors is going down. Do you think that's reversible?
Well, yes, and we actually made a projection as to what will happen, what did happen in 2020. I think there are lots of big changes afoot, Andrew. I think we've been seeing in our giving report how flat the top line of giving is, especially if you take inflation into account, and how it's really not keeping commensurate space with relation to the growth in population. So we see a lower participation. Of course, there is why is that? There's a whole different discussion that can range from economic factors and cost of living and to more demographic and preferences. And as I often talk about, the blurring of the lines, because don't forget, this is an era of corporate brand marketing. Corporations market themselves these days as social change agent and social good agent, because that's kind of the sign of the times. That's what their millennial employees demand. So corporations act as charities, really, as conveyors of social good and social impact. That's how they're positioning themselves. And there's so many examples of that. That's just how branding is this today. Like, everybody wants to be not just about selling services or products, but also about being engaged. And we've seen that also in the demand that CEOs take stands on social issues, and we see this a lot in the States. It's really a different era. But what that has also done, Andrew, is that for younger people, it has really blurred this line between what is a charity, what is my company doing, and its foundation, what is the the crowdfunding, which is a for-profit, because they all appear to be doing the same thing. I think maybe on the part of the younger adults, there is not enough appreciation of what charities really are and how creative and amazing original social entrepreneurs they are, that also do not have any other agenda, but are driven authentically by the mission to change the world in the area that they chose. And they may not have the sleekest user interface, right? They may not have the sleekest merchandising, and but in reality, they are different, and they really are the people who will turn no one if you knock on their doors, right? Because they're driven. It's just like a very different, so that's definitely one of the reasons. But I think that big issue of how to engage younger people for generations to come will remain a big question. And even if those younger people change their behavior and start donating more or engaging more as they enter different phases of life, I mean, one thing is for sure, that they will not leave technology. I think the technology trend and the trend towards mobile and online donations is firmly established, because the digital economy is now accelerated its expansion, right? So no matter what, things will be done through through technology and through digital channels, because that has been already, that was happening before the pandemic, as you know, but now the pandemic has really greatly accelerated all of those trends, from like digital health to more online shopping. It has grown in Canada to 10%. It was always like 4 or 5%, and in the States is now in the 16%. So no matter what, I think the shift to digital and really going through the digital transformation is something that charities will have to really grapple with in order to, I mean, not just survive, but really thrive, right? Because let's not forget that technology is disruptive, and transition is very hard. And again, I can talk about that from my firsthand experience as a magazine publisher back in 2000. But there are also enormous opportunities. There are also enormous opportunities to not be constrained by physical barriers, to offer your programs, across the country, to also collaborate and invent other things to achieve, right? Like it's also there are also lots of opportunities presented in it.
Yeah. Do you think that? And I'm interested to know how Canada helped sort of weather the COVID storm last year. What I'm interested also is a perspective of, do you think, obviously we're all talking about digital, we're all talking about how charities are pivoting to, moving away from online galas to online events. Do you think that's fundamentally going to change the way charities operate and fundraise and go to market? Or do you think that it's something that COVID has created in its time, and then it'll go back to the way that it was?
I don't think it will go back to the way it was. And I'm not, I mean, there are lots of authors and, kind of futurists and commentators and, really smart people who are basically saying, and I agree with them, that COVID and this pandemic has fundamentally changed the way we live, operate. For example, we know that we will likely have the hybrid workplace and some remote workplace forever, right? Like very few people that I know expect, full staff to return to the office, right? There are certain things that are about behaviors, are about, digital health. Now that we know this works and lots of doctors have invested into different interfaces. And so I think everybody basically saying that trends that were already present in this growth of digital economy have now been accelerated, and they're here to stay. That does not mean that overnight we will not have any offline, fundraising, or I don't think so. But I think that big trend will continue, and eventually, and I don't know when that will be, will become a dominant force. And again, I can draw lots of parallels with the magazine and newspaper print industry and what has happened from the beginning to where that space is at now, and how subscribers are acquired, and how few inserts into newspapers I see that are, the subscriber acquisition, where before that was a dominant. So I think this change is afoot, and I don't think it's going to stop. And I think that pandemic and this experience with it will actually change the way, it will alter so many ways in which we live forever. That's what I think.
And Canada Helps plays a big part in that, because obviously you're providing the tools for the organizations that perhaps have delayed sort of a real strategic focus. You're providing the tools that allow them to get there. So I'm sure last year for you was a very busy year.
Yes, and last year was, and to be honest, I didn't know what to expect, because this was my first year when something so huge has happened in the charitable sector. So I didn't know if, we know that lots of charities suffer. So many of them lost, lots of revenues, and so I didn't really know what to think. But we have, luckily, and thank God, because we worked for years to create all this, all of a sudden the demand for, to set up online fundraising capabilities and to really learn how to be more effective has literally skyrocketed. So, we at one point had 300, 400, 500 charities reaching out every week.
Wow.
In a panic, right, to set themselves up. And we worked so hard, almost to the point that it broke us, to try and accommodate all that, because we were caught a bit as a charity ourselves. It would be maybe different in the for-profit sector. We didn't kind of invest ahead of this curve. So we were hiring people as we were trying to serve and serve charities and help them. But I think in last calendar year, we generated and processed close to $500 million which is more than double what we did the year before. And big part of that success were the cause funds that we created that were there, right? And they just became such a good thing for the moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's so many. So we then had to, scale and invest and hire more people, and we're actually continuing to do this because when so many charities rely on you for their donation processing and for effectiveness of those tools, of course, you have a great responsibility, and that is the very mission of why we exist and why, we're very committed to that. But it's interesting, Andrew, for me, because of course we talked about this before. Overnight, I didn't have to convince anyone that digital transformation is important. So that's what changed, right? And even when I talk about how charities needed to invest into their own capacity, people didn't understand this. I feel that people understand that better now, because when we talk about investment in technology and the acquisition of digital skills, everybody understands that costs money. It's not something you can do on a shoestring, or you can do with some old computer. So that whole infrastructure around technology and really bolstering charities' capability to live, to survive, to be effective in this age, that everybody understands that will come. It has to come with the investment. It cannot come in any other way. So I think I also see a shift that, people are kind of recognizing that more readily than before, right? And not to mention that, for charities to be effective in the future, they will be competing for digital talent with, small, medium-sized businesses, corporations, other technology companies, banks, right? Because so no longer will it be possible to, hire, low-skilled people because you can't pay them 1/3 of the market salary, right? So, I see that some of those are structural gaps that will have to be solved.
Right.
And some of them really go at some deeply held kind of paradigms and assumptions that we all have about charities.
Yeah, and it goes back to the point that you were making earlier on about some of the challenges in terms of how organizations can invest and the perceived challenges of investing in the infrastructure in order to grow. That's probably a bigger topic for today. So I think it's a great place to end on. But before I let you go, Marina, I do want to go through the quick six. I'm asking the same questions to everyone. So we're going to go through them sort of very, very, very quickly. So the least favorite app on your iPhone, or on your phone, I should say.
Ring, because it doesn't work half of the
time. Okay, good. That's a good. Your favorite song?
Okay, I love almost everything by Talking Heads and David Byrne. Once in a Lifetime, Heaven, and She Was.
So I'm gonna just pause this quick six to say that is fantastic. I love Talking Heads so much so that I play it around the house. It is now my son's favorite band.
Oh, come on! Oh, that's so adorable.
Great choice. Great favorite movie.
Oh, I love so many. But I have to say that I remember being kind of mind blown at university when I discovered this iconic Russian, somewhat cultish movie director called Andrei Tarkovsky, and his movie Stalker, which blew my mind. So I remain a big devotee of his.
Thank you. If you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be?
Canada. I think Canada is the best place. I grew up in communism. I moved around. I traveled. I lived in the States. I think Canada is the best place. There is nowhere else that I would rather live.
Great. The first nonprofit that you remember really having an impact on you and resonating with you?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in communism, and in communism, we didn't have charities as we know them here. Government was really looking after people who needed help, and it's different. But I remember when I moved here, Andrew, I moved here in 1987, and in 1989, I went to the Toronto Humane Society and adopted a dog. And I remain connected to them, and I just absolutely love dog and animal rescues. I think they do such important work.
Fantastic. And lastly, and this is going to be difficult because you've had an extraordinarily broad career, but if you could have any other profession, if you could do any other profession or at least attempt it, what would it be?
Well, before I moved here and became an immigrant, I was going to be a professor in literary theory and a book critic, and that remains a huge passion. Maybe it's still not too late, or maybe in another life. But
never too late. Never too late. Marina, thank you so much for taking the time. It's as always, it's great to see you. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for all the great work you do. And we'll speak to you soon.
Not at all, Andrew. Thank you.